Peppa in space. Peppa in space. It was space day at playgroup. Peppa and her friends were very excited. Does anyone know what space is? Asked Madam Gazelle. Space is the physical universe beyond the Earth's atmosphere, said Edmund Elephant. Edmund was a bit of a clever clogs. That's right, Edmund, said Madam Gazelle. And today we are going to talk about something you will find in space. The moon, shouted all the children. Yes, said Madam Gazelle. Can I live on the moon? Asked Danny Dog. It is possible, replied Madam Gazelle, but you will need to take oxygen, water and lots of other things with you. Can you jump in muddy puddles on the moon? Asked Peppa. No, said Madam Gazelle. There is no rain to make puddles. What can you do on the moon then? Asked Peppa. You will soon find out, said Madam Gazelle, because today we are going to the moon, shouted Pedro Pony. Not exactly, said Madam Gazelle. We are going to the Space Museum. Oh, sighed all the children. At the museum you will train to be astronauts, said Madam Gazelle, and see what it's like to walk on the moon. Wow, gasped all the children. Really, we should be going there in a moon buggy, said Danny, not a bus.
You didn't read this? Padi, ada padi.
Yeah. Continue paniklam. Stop pangada.
Ida padi.
Miss Rabbit arrived to take everyone to the Space Museum. Really, we should be going there in a moon buggy, said Danny Dog, not a bus. How long until we get there? Asked Peppa. As long as it takes you finish your apple, replied Miss Rabbit. I finished my apple, said Susie Sheep. Does that mean we are there? How about we sing a song for Miss Rabbit, suggested Madam Gazelle. Something like, but before Madam Gazelle could finish, all the children started to sing. We are going to the moon. We'll get there soon. And they sang it to Miss Rabbit all the way to the museum. When they arrived at the museum, the children were met by a real astronaut, Grandpa Rabbit. Hello there, fellow astronauts, he boomed. Our space training mission today will take us to the moon. The ride may be bumpy, but it will be worth it when you get to see what it's like to walk on the moon. Hooray, cheered the children. The children put their special space suits and boots as quickly as they could. It's time to hop on board our spacecraft, called Grandpa Rabbit when they were ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off! Cheered all the children. Children in Sultan, little astronauts. Continue.
Grandpa Rabbit.
Grandpa Rabbit and the children zoomed off on their training mission. On the way to the moon, Grandpa Rabbit told the children all about different planets in the solar system. There's Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, he said.
But Neptune and the
dwarf planet Pluto, he said. Robots have landed on Mars, but no one else has done so yet. George was listening very carefully. Mars, he whispered to himself. Bump. We have landed on the moon, said Grandpa Rabbit. Now, my little astronauts, it's time for you to see what it's like to walk on the moon. Just take one small step out of the spacecraft and one. Peppa and her friends all took giant leaps out of spacecraft wearing Grandpa Rabbit's anti-gravity rubber bands. Whee! The children had so much fun bouncing up and down with the anti-gravity rubber bands. They sang a song over and over again. Listen to our space tune. We're walking on the moon. Boing, boing, boing. Wow, gasped Peppa, bouncing over Madame Gazelle's head. Walking on the moon is great, but jumping up and down on it is even better. It's time to get back down to earth now, children, called Grandpa Rabbit. Oh, sighed the children. When they arrived back on earth, the children were sad. Remember, children, your adventure isn't really over, said Grandpa Rabbit. It's just beginning. If you keep training, you can all be real astronauts like me one day. Yeah, we're going to the moon, sang the children, and they sang it on the bus all the way back to playgroup. Space is amazing, Daddy, said Peppa that night. I want to be an astronaut so I can jump up and down on the moon every day. But George had set his sights on somewhere else. Mars, he whispered. Ah, said Daddy Pig. Are you going to be the first piggy on Mars, George? George nodded his head and smiled. That night, George dreamed he had gone into space with Peppa, and they were on the first little piggies ever to jump up and down on Mars. Peppa in space.